All right, here I'm going to show you how you do problem number 1 and 2 from lesson 101D. Now in this lesson, you're going to notice that we're going to mix all the laws of exponents. So in other words, this and this, see, all of these laws is going to be mixed in the questions you're going to be doing lesson 101D. Now, there are many ways you can work these exponential expression. What I'm going to show you is the way I do it, which sometimes I think is the easiest way of doing it. Okay, so let me start with problem number 1, question 1. So if you see here, I'm going to write the problem on my little whiteboard here. Okay, so if you notice in this question, we have parentheses 5 to the 13th power over 5 to the 7th power, close the parentheses, times parentheses 5 to the 3rd power, all of that raised to the negative 2nd power. Now, here's what I do. This is my thinking. I'm sharing with you the way I think these problems. One of the things I like to do first is to get rid of the parentheses. So here we have 2 parentheses. So I'm going to work with the first parentheses. And inside the parentheses, I see that I have a fraction. And the top and the bottom, they have the same base. So that means that I'm going to be using this rule right here that is called the quotient of a power, which basically means every time you divide powers with the same base, keep the base. So who's my base here? Oops, my bad. Who's my base here? 5. And subtract the exponents. So 13 minus 7. Okay, 13 minus 7, that will give you 6. And see, I got rid of the first parentheses. Now, I'm going to get rid of the second parentheses. Okay, so I want to get rid of this parentheses here. Now, this parentheses, I see I only have one base inside with an exponent and an exponent outside. That will be this rule right here, the power of a power rule, which says every time you have a base with an exponent raised to another exponent, you keep the base, I'm going to keep the 5, and you're going to multiply the exponent. So 3 times negative 2, you can use a calculator if you need to, it will be negative 6. So look, you can see I got rid of the parentheses, no more parentheses. So that's one thing I like to do first. Now I need to simplify more. Sometimes they say simplify, some other time they say evaluate. So I need to simplify more what I have here. Okay? And how do I do that? Well, I'm going to apply this rule, the product of a power, because I'm multiplying 2 powers with the same base. Okay, that's what this rule is about. And what do you do when that happens? When you multiply 2 powers with the same base, you're going to keep the base. Okay, so I'm going to keep the 5. And I'm going to add the exponents of 6 plus negative 6. And when I add those exponents, I get 5 to the 0 power. Okay? But I can simplify more because there's another law of exponent that's called the 0 exponent that says any base to the 0 power, the answer is always 1. So my final simplified answer is 1. Okay? And that's how you do problem number 1. Okay? Now, I'm going to do question number 2. Okay? Same thinking, by the way. Let me erase this so I can write that problem here. So, same idea that I did in problem number 1. For me to work these problems in a simple way, I like to get rid of the parentheses first. Let me write down the problem. A to the 5th power times parentheses a to the 4th power times a to the 3rd power over 8 to the 9th power. Close the parenthesis. So if you see, I have a parenthesis here. Okay, I have the parenthesis. I want to eliminate the parentheses. But when I look inside the parentheses, I see a fraction. However, when you see, if you observe this fraction, on the top, I have the 8 repeated. And those 8s are multiplying. So every time I see repetition, I also repeated bases. I also want to eliminate those repeated bases. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay. So I'm going to keep the parentheses. I'm going to keep the fraction bar. I'm going to keep the 8 to the 9 power. But what I really want to do now is to get rid of that repeated 8 that I have on the top of the fraction bar. And those 8s are multiplying. So that means that I'm going to be applying this rule, the product rule. Okay? That when you multiply 2 powers with the same base, you keep the base, who's my base here, 8, what I highlight in yellow. And what you're going to do with the 2 exponents, you're going to add them. That's how I get to the 7th power. Okay? So you can see I haven't get rid of the parentheses yet. I'm working first, getting rid of the repeated 8s in the parentheses. In my next step now, I can eliminate the parentheses because inside the parentheses, let me highlight this in another color. So inside of this parenthesis, I have a fraction, which means I'm dividing. And by the quotient rule, when you're dividing powers with the same base, what you do is you keep the base. My base is 8. Okay, my base is 8. And what you're going to do with the exponents is you're going to subtract them. Okay, 7 take away 9. You can do the calculator. It's going to be -2. And look, I got rid of the parentheses. Now my answer, I'm going to multiply by the power of 8 that didn't have a parenthesis. Okay. And again, look, I'm multiplying powers with the same base. Here we go again. That's the product rule. When you multiply powers with the same base, you keep the base. And what you're going to do with the exponents, you're going to add them. So 5 plus -2 is 3. And there is my simplified answer. Well, equivalent answer as the original problem. Now, if they ask you to simplify more, which sometimes they're going to do, take your calculator and put in the calculator 8 to the 3rd power. See that button, this button right here is exponent to the 3rd power. You can see this is 512. So this will be the final simplified answer. Okay? I hope this helps.